So recently the Scott Pilgrim Takes Off anime released and I managed to binge it all in about a day or two. How big of a fan are you of the original Scott Pilgrim movie? Because I was a huge fan. And I watched the new Scott Pilgrim Takes Off anime and honestly, I started off skeptical but I ended up enjoying it. You'll find out soon. So if you're like me and you've not read the comic books, then you must have seen the Scott Pilgrim vs. the World movie in 2010. And I put my hand on my heart and I say it's genuinely one of my favourite movies of all time. The cast is fantastic, the story is fantastic, the visual effects, the comedy, everything holds up. And of course the creme de la creme, the directing of Edgar Wright is what makes it one of the best films I've ever seen. But like a month or two ago, I got a random notification stating that the entire cast will be returning for a Scott Pilgrim anime. And I had no clue why Scott Pilgrim needs an anime, but I mean I was with it. And by the time the show released, I actually didn't watch it because I was in the midst of rewatching BoJack Horseman, so I didn't really get around to watching Scott Pilgrim. After a week or so passed by, I decided to finally watch the Scott Pilgrim anime and well, the first episode had me kind of skeptical. See, if you've seen the movie and you assume the anime would be basically retelling that story, you'd be completely wrong. They've actually taken the story and put a whole new twist on it, and one of the biggest twists is the death of Scott Pilgrim. Yeah, that's where the problem started. See, Scott Pilgrim is an integral character, so killing him off in the first episode was just kind of a strange move. Now at the time I assumed the show was still going in the same direction as the movie, however replacing the main character Scott with the main love interest Ramona Flowers. Before anyone starts having a go at me, I genuinely just wanted to see Scott Pilgrim again. It was Michael Cera voice acting, so when I saw Scott Pilgrim back I was kind of excited to see how it would go. So the minute he died kind of just threw me off completely. Now despite being hesitant to this, despite feeling like that was a bad choice, I just decided to go with it and continue watching the rest of the show. And oh boy am I glad that Scott Pilgrim got killed off. I say this because he kind of returns in the second to last episode, so that whole death thing really doesn't matter in the end. So the original movie kind of had Scott Pilgrim fighting each evil ex, which is a good part of the film. I'm not saying it's a bad part, but in the anime they kind of replaced the having to fight each ex, and it's kind of a whole different way around it. First I want to say they did a good job by making one of the most obscure and forgettable evil exes a very big part of this season. Now when you hear Matthew Patel and you start scratching your head, I do not blame you. I thought the exact same thing. In the first movie he was there and he was a good comedic factor and a good first fight, but by that point he's immediately forgettable. Nobody remembers him because everyone's focusing on which new villain comes next. But in this series, Matthew Patel kinda has a more prominent role. He overtakes the final evil ex, Gideon, and he takes over the entire G-Man company. And this kinda happens in the second episode, and that's like a really cool subverting of expectations. Because once you see Matthew Patel overtake Gideon, you start thinking that Matthew Patel is going to be the prominent villain of the series. Basically, each episode keeps you guessing on what's going on, where's Scott, what's Matthew Patel doing, what's going to happen next. Which is great because if this was just a recap of the movie, you would know exactly what would happen next. You're just seeing the same thing in anime form. And it's not just Matthew Patel, a lot of villains that were immediately forgotten about post their fight were given more prominent screen time. Lucas Lee, who in the movie just gets defeated and forgotten about, is a lot more of a prominent character here. Chris Evans coming back to voice him, he's iconic, he's hilarious, and he has a lot more screen time. Like, we get to see more of these evil exes outside of just fighting them. Like, we get a whole story about them. We get to see them outside of the consistent fighting, and it's refreshing. Is that honestly really refreshing? Of course, my kind of disappointment was that I didn't get to see these characters fight in the anime, because I would have been so excited to see Lucas Lee vs Scott Pilgrim again, Matthew Patel vs Scott Pilgrim again. Obviously the disappointment of losing Scott in the first episode still kind of hit for me, but as the series continued on, I just kept rolling with it and I kept enjoying it. But if we're being completely honest, Ramona wasn't that well done in the movie. The movie is fantastic, but Ramona as a character feels very lifeless. It didn't really feel like she had a story, she just felt like a backdrop of a character. In this anime, we play around a lot more with Ramona's character. We see more about her. We see more of her. Scott Pilgrim was a character that was well done in the movie and was also going to be well done in the anime if they retold the same story. But now the anime is actually taking the time to go into the Ramona Flowers character, and I'm all up for it. I mean, it was really good. Like I said, I wasn't really a big fan of Ramona in the movie because she just didn't really, well, she just didn't feel like a part of the film. And in this anime, she's a very integral part of it, and her character's really just enjoyable. Like I said, it's really good that the villains are more two-dimensional and they're getting more screen time, and on the other side, Ramona's getting more screen time and she's not just a backdrop of a character. Obviously, what also is great is that the entire original cast returned to voice the characters in the anime, and that's fantastic. I mean, I'm down and I'm happy that they did that. My only slight issue is sometimes it feels like the characters' expressions in the anime and the voice actors reading doesn't match. From my experience with voice actors in anime and what I've seen in anime is when the character is expressive, the voice actor is equally as expressive. If the character's screaming, the voice actor would be actively screaming at the top of their lungs too. However, in this show, if the character is screaming, it doesn't really feel like the voice actors are screaming. I'm not here to crap on the entire voice acting because it was all really well done. But I do honestly admire all the actors' dedication to coming back and doing this anime, because it honestly just caught me off guard that Brie Larson, Chris Evans, Brandon Ruth, Michael Cera all agreed to come back and do this. I didn't realize Scott Pilgrim had such an impact on these actors that they were willing to come back and do this again. Now, of course, the animation is amazing. It's really, really good. I like the colors, I like the vibrance, I like the expressive actions of the characters. It was all genuinely really good. But compared to the filmography of the Scott Pilgrim movie, it's just a bit below. See, the Scott Pilgrim movie, despite the fact it's not animated, despite the fact it was made in 2010, the filmography in Scott Pilgrim vs. the World trumps the anime by far. Edgar Wright always subtly drops some hints. He always uses sound as an engaging part of the movie. He always has little Easter eggs, little hidden messages, little symbolism. But without that magic touch that Edgar Wright brought to the movie, it's one of the lacking features in the anime that I personally feel made it less better than the movie. The story, in my opinion, was one of the most fantastic things. I haven't seen Scott Pilgrim in a while, but I clearly remember all the events and all the details. I've seen it quite enough times to know what happens in the film. So when the anime came around and subverted my expectations, that was really good. I like the fact that the villains were more prominent, they were less one-dimensional, they had more character to them, they had more emotion to them. It was very good. I really like the little story changes as well, such as making Todd fall in love with Wallace. That was a very funny storyline, I kind of enjoyed it. Making Matthew Patel the CEO was very good as well. There was an end credit scene and it does look like we might be getting another season of this, and I'm more than pumped. Anyway, that's just my hopefully short review on Scott Pilgrim Takes Off. Thank you all for watching. I have another video coming soon. Peace.